we have a really great panel for you, and it's pretty much we have two opposite extremes sitting there before us. And so we have Jasmine Chavez right here, who works in the nonprofit sector, right? So her background is law. And so what she does is she uses her law background to help in the Latino community, with logistics when it comes to, are we doing it the right way? What are the law ramifications with or without it? And so she's all, consciously aware of community. And then we have Leila Rivas here, who works for Ogilvy and Mather as well, and she's one of our VPs in our social media division. So I think it's going to be a very interesting panel to see how social media is used in the Latino community in nonprofit versus corporate America, right? Because as we know, it's two extremes. Nonprofit, we're doing something totally different than trying to sell Ajax, to the households. So without any further ado, I want to go ahead. Oh, and I just want to do a quick plug in. As I was introduced, I am a blogger, social media strategist in my own head. And I also have a blog. I'm not sure if it's on there or not, but feel free to visit, and it's nandoism.com. So if you want to reach out there. And also for tonight, we do have a hashtag. If some of you want to, tweet out a couple of things, and it's hashtag conversaciones. And I know it's written up there like I had a seizure when I was writing it, but it's just, it's just the way it is. What I want us to think about while we're doing this whole panel is, we're eventually going to have a question and answer. So after Leila presents, Jasmine's going to present as well. And then we're going to have a conversation, a discussion, the three of us. But then I'm going to open up the mic over to you guys to see what questions you have. And I want you to be thinking on the terms of corporate America versus nonprofit, but either way, how can we use either or strategies into your own social media strategies as, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish? Maybe you just want to get more followers on Twitter, but why is that? Why do you want to get more followers? Why do you want more people? Why did I just plug my own blog, right? So think on those levels while we're listening to these presentations. Right.
How's everybody doing? Good. This is a Latino community, so how's everyone doing? Great, perfect. I'll have to tell you sometime about a concert I went to where it was an African singer and people weren't dancing, and she said, "I'm not going to continue performing if you don't dance." So we need the energy, If I place it here, is that okay? Great. So I just want to fill you in a little bit. I know my bio is on the paper in front of you, but I'd love to just give you a little sense of what I work on now, because I think it is very relevant to what we're talking about. And I spend the bulk of my time working with the government of Mexico. We communicate in English, however, but with the American audience and the Canadian audiences primarily from a social media point of view, communicating the news of what's going on in Mexico, all of the positive news, really, because it gets drowned out a lot by some of the sensationalist headlines we receive, and a lot of people aren't really aware of all of the amazing development work going on economically. They're discovering they have 5% GDP growth, the emerging middle class, sustainability, infrastructure, and health. They'll have more health coverage than we will this year. So I help get those messages across in the social space, and I also do respond to a lot of the crisis and do some risk mitigation for them. So it's a really interesting, challenging, amazing country to work with. I'm going tomorrow morning, so forgive me too because I'm a little bit under the weather. But so that's basically what I do. I also work with brands like Pfizer and Bayer and the State Department, everything from healthcare to governance to fast-moving consumer goods. I really kind of will come in and brainstorm a lot of different areas, and they're all very different because in the healthcare space, there are different regulations. So that's something for another conversation. Right now we'll focus on one of my favorite topics, Latinos. And for the designers in the room, yes, this is a template. Sorry. Next up, I'm going to study design just so I don't have to throw a template your way. This I thought I would start with because a lot of times you see in the news and people talk and they talk about immigration, and this is something I deal with on a personal level, dealing with, well, professional level really, but it's become personal. Some of the incorrect statistics that go around regarding immigration, for example. It's actually slowed to a trickle. When you look at immigration from Mexico, it's something like, I think, 0.01%. It's very low. What isn't low is when you look at the growth of the Hispanic population in the United States. So, and we see that, and I think this was done in 2009, that's why it says projected, but you see that it's on an upswing. It's the fastest growing population. And as we probably know, a lot of that is due to the importance of family, and it's a community growing. And so I think it's funny when we hear a lot of candidates talk about it, and I go, you shouldn't be thinking about that. We should send them this slide, and then they won't know what to do. So it's really great because it's a huge growth area for brands, for the nonprofit sector as well. And I wanted to show you that and then lead into some of the trends just to give you a sense of there's the growing population and some of the statistics surrounding Hispanics in social media. And forgive me, there is a lot of debate around the term Hispanic and Latino. We've done a lot of research around that. It's just like a side note, because a lot of Hispanics or Latinos, for lack of a generic, having this generic word, they'll say, I'm not Hispanic, I'm Venezuelan, or I'm not Mexican, I'm Colombian, I'm not. So I'm using it for the sake of this presentation, but just something to keep in mind, top of mind, and it's something I'm always aware of when I'm dealing with brands and people speaking to brands and speaking to that audience. But Spanish-dominant Hispanics are actually more likely to stick with their favorite brand compared to English-dominant Hispanics. Just an interesting tidbit. A lot of the Hispanic audiences, the Spanish-dominant, grew up with a certain brand. I'm not sure, and it would be interesting to know whether that has to do with differentiation in the marketplace. Maybe there aren't as many products, so it's a product they're fond of. Maybe it's a cultural thing where we're used to in America having variety and lots of different things, so we always want to switch and try the best thing. So it's something that is a very interesting statistic and something we look at when we're looking at different brands and how to speak to certain audiences and those brands. 65% of Spanish speakers are on Facebook, and 85% of Hispanics 18 to 29 years old are online. That demographic also is one of the largest demographics for the Hispanic audience too. That holds true, I think, in the US as well as the country I deal with a lot, Mexico. They have a very large Gen X, Gen Y population. I guess that would be Gen Y. And just a few other stats, and I know Jasmine's going to have some as well to break out the social space. This is 76% of Hispanic moms go online to learn about different brands. Moms are a huge market, not just for Latinos, or Latinas, because they're moms, but also for American moms. And they're talking in the blogosphere, huge. We do a lot of work with different brands, really getting feedback from moms. It's a trusted source. So another interesting thing, 45% of smartphone users are Hispanic, and a majority are not only digital savvy, but are actually leaders and innovators in social media. And this is something that Jasmine has some good stats around as well. They over-index, so against every other demographic, African American and Caucasian, they are leading content generators. So they are outpacing all the other demographics in terms of content. They're creating more. Pretty fascinating stuff, because I think a lot of people probably don't know that. And then this is something that we think about when we look at brands. Clients will come to us and say, what's your POV on talking to Latinos? And it's always a fun question, because it's not like very simple. First you have your acculturated, so that's your bilingual audience, and then your unacculturated, your Spanish dominant audience. And so these are some of the key things we think about. Do we want to do, if they're acculturated, bilingual posts? do we have a C translation option? This is specifically talking about Facebook. And for unacculturated, do we, which we don't recommend, translating English language posts from an English language brand, into Spanish, but this is something that a lot of brands do, which I'll show you. And then a geo-targeting by language selection. So what you can do is, within Facebook, target by what you chose as your main language. That way you get separate content. And that is usually, I believe you can do it, you can also build a custom application for it, which is what CocaCola did. These are some of the considerations, as I mentioned, looking at whether someone is bilingual or monolingual. The other considerations that we think about, and also don't laugh at my funny animations, I had a little fun with it, is we say, okay, well, where is your market talking? Where we do a listening post, what we call a listening post, and we go in and we research through the softwares that we call ourselves tool agnostic, so we'll use any kind of tool in terms of software. There are several, Radian 6, Crimson Hexagon for sentiment, Sysmos. There are a range of software tools you can use to listen to conversations online. And so first we want to listen to what are people saying, who is your market that you want to reach, and where are they? And then we look at what those social networks and websites are. And then we look at how they're searching. So we also look at what we do something called a consumer intent model. Very fancy we look at how they search. And so we have proprietary software where we are able to see how people search. A free tool is Google Insights. You can look on Google Insights and see some of the top searched words for whatever you're trying to reach. And we look at how they're searching. So we might think, oh, we're going to speak this way, but maybe people speak a different way when they're looking for something. And how are you going to put your brand in front of them and show them something if you don't know how they're actually searching? So this kind of research is really important to see how. And then, the simple, where is your market from? What is the region, state, city? Because sometimes people, what we discovered on a healthcare account was the client wanted to target, they wanted to look into vaccines and parents and mothers for a certain vaccine, and they were looking at Spanish language. And I think they wanted to target Mexican mothers, and they thought that the Mexican mothers were searching, it's kind of complicated, but I'll try and make it simple. They thought that the Mexican mothers were searching for the vaccine information for health purposes, but actually when we listened and we did our listening post, we discovered that they weren't looking at it for health information, they were looking at it for immigration information and travel information. And then they also weren't looking at the information coming out of the US in Spanish or even Mexico. They were finding their information from Spanish websites. So then we knew that because we had listened before we developed this whole strategy, we knew they're going to Spain to look at their information. Maybe we can reach out to those Spanish bloggers or websites or see what they're doing, and then that will inform our strategy. So it was really helpful to see that. And then I'm going to be finishing off really with just two quick case studies to show you examples of posts and how people are handling them. This is for Kool-Aid. We were looking at Kool-Aid. We often do something called a social media audit, where we look at different brands, their competitors, and what they're doing to, again, inform best practices. Because, again, this is a relatively new space. Social media's been around, really with Facebook 2007, but the kind of complex communications that are now going on, it's something that best practices are being formulated around. So, for example, a lot of people are doing the English posts that are translated verbatim into Spanish. Well, the problem with this approach, obviously, is there's no unique content for the Hispanic audience, and it's a different, even if you're bilingual, it's a different side of your personality. You would speak differently. The content should just be different. The music might be different. There are a range of reasons why, but a lot of people don't necessarily get that yet. And then the other is, like I said before, Spanish language posts targeted to those who have selected Spanish as their default language. This is a great one if you want to reach people who are not bilingual, because it's the best way to do it because they're not bilingual, so you know where to go and how to do it. And then you also have these kind of C translation options, so that just in case you want to read. The jury's still out. I think this is great to offer it for someone like me who speaks in English, sometimes speaks in Spanish, but I'm not fluent. I would say I'm very proficient. So I'm the kind of person who likes this. But do I think that someone in English is coming here and going to be doing that? Probably not. I just am because I'm doing research and I want to improve my Spanish. So we're saying these days that we really need new Spanish language content that will be created and tailored to U.S. Hispanics. Am I going over time a little bit? Okay, I'll try and wrap it up. And then we also suggest exploring the possibility of recognizing bilingual habits and mixing Spanish language content and English language content. And this causes a lot of debate in my own office. My colleague is bilingual. He doesn't like Spanglish. However, my good friends who grew up in Mexico and Houston really speak in Spanglish, which is perfect for me because then I understand everything. So I like Spanglish, and they like Spanglish, but he grew up in Mexico until he was 12, and it annoys him. So I think it's really a personal thing, too, and something that is going to continue to evolve through, trial and error, really. CocaCola, this is an example of what they did. They have a custom application. Twitter's interesting because you don't have the capacity to speak both languages or tweak or have a C translation option, really. So we often say this is where you have to listen, because if you want to do a dedicated channel, you should do a dedicated channel for Spanish language individuals. But if not, then you really need to provide links to Spanish language content as well. I think the linking is important since that's where a lot of the activity is, the one-liners and the hyperlink. These are kind of my 5 key takeaways and things to consider. So if you guys are going to go out into the workforce, or you're already in the workforce and people are asking you these questions and you want to know what's the best way to go about reaching that audience, we say listen, which is kind of like with any relationship. You should really be listening first and always so that you know what's happening. And then look at what the competitors are doing. Again, when you're dating, you got to look at what the other people are doing out there. Got to see what's out there so you know you're doing the right thing. And doing something even better, actually. So and then this is interesting. We were looking at a healthcare client and talking about healthcare. Number 3 is a way, if you don't have certain content and you don't have ties to a certain audience, but you want to have ties to that audience, really collaborating with an organization, a trusted spokesperson, or a network can really help amplify whatever you're trying to do. You can help utilize those relationships, and it can help reach people that you may not otherwise reach. This came up, it was very interesting, about doctors and nurses, and the fact that we were talking about network. In this case, when I was writing this, we were talking about liaising with a network of nurses, because in the Hispanic community, people really trust nurses a lot, and they feel sometimes even more comfortable with nurses, especially those who are Spanish language dominant. So these are really good areas and things to consider when you're looking at both bilingual and Spanish dominant, but specifically, I was thinking in mind of the Spanish language dominant. And then if you link up with a bilingual spokesperson, that can kind of be the bridge between the two. And as I referenced many times, create new Spanish language content. I can't say it enough. It's like trying to speak, Greek to someone who's Turkish. Well, that's probably even more risque, but trying to speak a different language to somebody is one thing, but the cultural implications and certain ties, if you're trying to reach the unacculturated audience, is very important. And some of the ways we talk about doing that, because I mentioned before, people might say, oh, I'm not just Latina, I'm Colombian or Venezuelan, we talk about doing certain builds where that is considered within Facebook. So you can maybe identify or do a custom app around the country that you're from, so that you can reach Puerto Ricans, you can reach Mexicans, and you can choose the region and the map and the location you're from, so that you don't feel like you're being lumped into this homogenous group, which is not. And that's it. I mean, we have explore the possibility of bilingual habits, research, really. I think we're in a time right now where the research around the bilingual habits of people, especially in the social space, is something we need to do more of.
Good evening, buenas noches. Thank you, Layla, for setting that up. My name is Jasmine Chavez, and as Nando said, Paloma, I do social media from a nonprofit, a movement perspective as well, and there's a lot of really similar tools that we also use in regards to listening. It's a lot of the same stuff that you're going to hear, because it's really important for the Latino community. There's no way to really kind of trick us. And the relationship that you create with the Latino community is the same as you would if we were face to face, right? And so that's something that I bring into the way I do social media and how I do brand management or cause management or any website or any kind of specific project that I have in mind. So I put the three big hashtags are Latism, that's Latinos in social media, Hispanicize, that's the HISPZ, Be Latino, I'm the social media strategist for Being Latino. It is an online media magazine. And then Justicia Hoy is the blog site that I run that monitors immigration, any kind of events that impact the Latino community. That's the hashtag that I use when I send out news pertaining to anything that has to do with the Latino immigrant community. So a little bit more statistics as to what the Latino demographics look like online. And the reason this is so important is because we are surpassing, like Layla said, every and all expectations of social media. We have taken to it like ducks in water. We love it. And I don't know if it could be because we're kind of social creatures by nature. I don't mean to lump us all together, but we love it. Something to think about is in regards to brands, when we really love a brand, we tend to really want everybody else to love that brand. For example, I love Mac and Apple products. So my parents all have to buy Mac and Apple products, and I'm really strict about that. So that's the kind of chismeando that we do with our communities. When we love something, we promote it, and it's the same concept when we do it online. So statistically, Latinos are advancing, and we surpass most of the social networking, social media trends of the United States. 18% of us are on Twitter. 84% of us use online video. Social networking sites, we access these sites at a rate about 56% more than our other counterparts, Black and non-white Hispanics. That makes sense, yes, sorry. And the reason for this is really quite simple. If you have family in other countries, like how many of you have families in other places around the world? Right, so you're using, whether it's your Facebook to communicate them, to post pictures of your prima's quinceañera or whatever it might be, your tia Cuca's tamales, whatever it might be, we're posting those online, right? And we love to see ourselves on videos. We love it. We love posing. We just love it. And that's something that we bring, right? And that's something that connects us to our loved ones that are in other countries. And so that's why that's another reason we're really taking to these social media networks and to really understanding social media at a much faster rate than other communities. So who out there in the Latino community is really starting to lead this trend? Out of the 50 million Latinos that we have in the United States, there's actually 24.6 million of us that are online. Out of that 24.6 million, 61% of them are digital influencers or really influential bloggers. So these bloggers can then turn into like the brand ambassadors for the community because they're blogging about stuff that really pertains to the specific audience that they're engaging, right? So for me, Justicia Hoy, I really focus on being able to educate and engage. But there's other cooking bloggers who are blogging for Maseca, for Masola, and they are being able to bring that to the community, and these brands are being able to bridge out to them because they're a trusted source of their fans. So Latina bloggers, Layla was saying we have the mommy bloggers. Mommy bloggers are huge in the Latino community, again, trusted source. But Latina bloggers themselves, we are, I think like 60% of the bloggers out there are Latinas. And we write about everything from travel, from cooking to lifestyle, laws, observational humor. I mean, any kind of blog that you're looking for Latina related, it's out there, and we're also demanding it at a much faster pace. So one of the big complaints are when you kind of look at Latinas in general, they say, well, there's not enough content actually out there that really caters to the Latina audience. And then for the Latino males, no, you haven't been left behind. There's a lot of Latino men's sites that are starting to rise up, catering to style, to health, to pretty much anything out there, because the Latino men actually don't get as social as the women. I don't know why, but it's the truth. So Latinos in social media, the actual organization Latism, it's an actual organization, it's a nonprofit organization. They hold tweet chats, which I'll get into here a little bit later, but every Thursday night, they will actually talk online about something that is important to the community, whether it's through consumer branding. It could be anything from healthcare, it could be State Farm Insurance wants to get a campaign out about buckling your seatbelt or getting renters insurance. They will come to Latism and say, we're trying to reach out to a certain demographic of people. Can you help us reach them? So every Thursday, they'll hold these tweet chats, and they'll reach literally millions of Latinos online. There was one tweet chat that they did about 2 months ago, and I believe it was for, I want to say it was like for milk. I don't remember. It was like milk recipes that went back and forth. And they reached over 1 million people in 2 hours of just tweeting. So the power of Twitter, the power of Facebook, it's incredible if you're trying to reach it out, whether for social causes or just for brand management in general. Nonprofits were also coming online to promote more information to their audiences. So just because you don't live in a specific community, just because you are looking for that information, whether it's the vaccinations, there's different nonprofits that are posting that information for you to see it. And it's not just post, but they're also doing viral videos in Spanish or in English so that people can understand what's going on in that specific part of the country. A really good example would be the anti-immigrant legislation in Alabama. My blog and the Southern Poverty Law Center really teamed up to promote their hotline, just in case there was any anti-immigrant sentiments, if there was any anti-immigrant attacks. People could call in and they could talk to someone, they could talk to an attorney and tell them what happened, where they were, and really get that information out there. At the same time, they posted both Spanish and English Know Your Rights presentations so that people could access those on the sites. So nonprofits and NGOs are really using this in a great way to be able to inform people and engage them in a much larger way than if they were just at a local level. Being Latino is an online magazine where anybody could be a writer. You can apply to be a writer, and they post on everything from entertainment to news, anything that you can think of, and it's a really engaging way for them to speak out to the community. They post articles from like religion, lifestyle, working out, entertainment, and it's a weekly newsletter, or a weekly magazine. Every week we have different articles that come out. We have tweet chats that we'll host with brands, with nonprofits, and just, again, to really engage the community and to really empower them. Why Latinos in social media, right? So 6 out of 10 Latino households own a computer with broadband internet services, and it's actually, it looks like a really large number, but it's really not a lot. For those households that don't have a computer, what are we going to take to? Our phones. Right? So even if the Latino household doesn't have a computer, the majority of them, at least 2 people in the home, will have a smartphone. And we love our smartphones. We are buying tablets and smartphone apps faster than any other demographic as well, which is funny because somebody was like, really, they're going to buy an app? Yeah, we will buy an app. We love the apps, especially soccer-related apps. I'm not trying to generalize, but Univision killed it with the World Cup, and now there's a soccer team, I believe in Mexico, where the athletes have the @ sign on their last names. And so, again, really engaging the community and having them be tech savvy as they're moving along. 65% of us are using smartphones to stay connected. 54.9% are active users on Facebook, and that means that they check in more than 3 or 4 times a day. 62% of us are joining online networks, and this could be any of the main, like Facebook, MySpace. It could also be Orkut, or there's different like online network sites in different parts of the country. So Argentina, Chile will have different networking sites and not just Facebook, although Facebook is global, but something to keep in mind if you're looking to like target different audiences, that each country will have a different social network, and they're pretty popular as well. And as Layla was saying, we have a growing bilingual population between the ages of 15 to 28, and some of us are speaking only Spanish, some of us are doing this Spanglish. We're doing a little bit of everything. And that's why we're kind of a mystery when it comes to how do you target us? Because you can't lump us up into one giant category. Again, the 2010 census came out, and 1 in every 6 Americans is Latino. That's a 50 million milestone that we hit. And I'm actually not sure if that includes the 4 million in Puerto Rico. So we could possibly be at 54 million. Our buying power is at $1 trillion, right? That's what we bring to the market, and that's why we're so lucrative, right? That's why we have marketing brands coming at us saying, buy this, buy that, because we do have that big buying power, and we do like to buy. The demographics of the 15 to 28-year-olds, that demographic, the Gen Y demographic, they're more educated, and they have a higher income than our other counterparts. So we like to shop, we like to buy, and we're well aware and kind of a conscious consumer when it comes to what products we want to engage with. So Latinos in social media, the way I like to tell, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a small business in regards to how to engage with us, language is very important. There's some people that if it's not posted in English, they're not going to see it. They don't want to read it. There's some people who if it's posted in Spanish, they don't want to read it, they don't want to see it. So again, doing that research of really understanding your community and understanding the audience and really doing that social listening before you engage, whether it's from a nonprofit or a small business perspective, is really critical before you just kind of open up a Facebook, I'm going to try to get people to like me. You kind of have to keep this in mind so that you're not losing people as you go along, and consistency. So it's kind of like that same thing. If you're starting a brand, you want to keep that brand consistent. Whether you're a nonprofit or, again, a small business, it's still the same principles as you move along. Digital storytelling is very important when it comes to, because I do work a lot with nonprofits and they're trying to raise money and they're trying to engage. Well, how are we telling the story and like the urgency of the nonprofit and the importance? So if you're a nonprofit here tonight, think about your message. The message has to be really compelling. The message has to stay constant. And it could be changing over time, but make sure that it's kind of the same messaging that you're delivering every time. And your messaging should stay the same, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter or High Five or Foursquare. It all needs to stay kind of constant. Community. It has to be meaningful and it has to be sustainable. So there's been products before that have come into the community and they just want to get the likes and they just want to get out and present those numbers and go home. That's not going to work with Latinos. I always tell different people, with Twitter, if someone sends me a tweet and let's say I don't respond back and that person happens to be a Latino from like South Texas, sometimes you don't know how that person's going to take it. So like if you don't like retweet them, they could take it as an insult, right? It's the same kind of formalities that you have with Latinos in person is the same formalities that you have to take online. So when they do retweet, when they do engage, you have to make sure that you have a follow-up strategy to really engage back with them. Because if you just go in for the numbers and you're like, yeah, we hit 1,000, woo, and that's it, that doesn't mean you won. There has to be that constant engagement, that constant participation, that constant storytelling, because that's what social media is. So entertainment has to be, again, engaging, but it has to be humorous, right? Latinos, we don't really take life too seriously. I mean, we take it seriously, but we like to have fun. So some of the best campaigns that I've seen are these really great humorous campaigns. And they use really funny videos and they use really funny personalities to really engage the audience and to allow them to participate. One of the people who I actually haven't seen engaged as much, I don't know if anybody knows El Piolín, right? I mean, he is like, king of certain communities. But he's on Facebook, and I think he has over, I don't even know how many, 4 million fans, right? But everybody trusts him. Everybody loves him. He's humorous. And he's somebody who's constantly engaging, and he does provide and he does support different brands, but he is very transparent the entire time. You know his motives, you know where he stands, you know who he is, you know his values, and that transparency is something that he takes with him wherever he goes. So if you're a nonprofit looking to join other bloggers, just really make sure that who the blogger is. Are they transparent? Are they being real with the community? And are they really engaging in a really meaningful way that will have a lasting power for the community? So one of the case studies for us is that we did a diabetes Twitter party. And what that is that we have a moderator. You have maybe 2 or 3 moderators, and you have panelists. So our panelists were about 2 doctors from the Montefiore Health Center. Being Latino was one of the moderators, and what you do is that you follow one hashtag. So for us, the hashtag was Fight Diabetes. And if people wanted to engage into the conversation, they could just put this hashtag at like 7 o'clock at night, and they were automatically a part of the conversation. It was open, and they could ask questions to the doctors regarding diabetes, medications, what was happening with diabetes, latest research. And the conversation went on for about 2 hours, and within that 2 hours, with just Fight Diabetes as our tweet chat, we reached 75,000 people every 50 tweets. And that was a significant number for us because we were noticing that people were asking questions that were really basic. And we also learned that there's like a strain of diabetes that is mutating in the Latino community, just in the Latino community, and it was something that a lot of us didn't even know out in the blogging world. And so this is another really great way to engage an audience and being able to provide more information and also connect yourself with other bloggers and other professionals or other experts in the field. And sometimes these move really fast. We just had one last Thursday with Best Buy. It was Me Best Buy, and we did a whole thing. We had prizes to give away, and we had about 20 tweets every 30 seconds. And so you have to stay on top, kind of monitoring who's asking questions, what's going on. And it sounds a lot more complicated than it is, but I promise you it's not. You just have to have a good hashtag and be ready to kind of roll and have a good moderator and good panelists. But it's a really amazing way to reach out to a larger audience and to really engage, because that way, we have a lot of big conferences across the nation, but this is a really great way to bring the experts home into in their computers, basically. The second project that I had a big honor in working with this project was the American Latino Museum project in Washington, D.C. So this is a proposed museum. It'll be a Smithsonian museum out on the Washington Mall. And what we did was we had to be able to gain support because we actually had to present this to Congress. So not only did we present a physical report to the president and to Congress and say, this is why we need a museum for the American Latino, but they also wanted to see, and this is one of the first times that they've ever asked of like any project, but they wanted to see what the online support said. So we spent about 2 years traveling around the country, and we would hold panels and forums just like this, and we engaged with the Latino communities, asking them, what do you want in this museum? What do you want? What don't you want? So then we decided to create an online strategy and ask them online to tell us their stories. So this is a story of the American Latino, not just of like Latin America, because that wasn't the purpose. But we had people tell us these really beautiful stories, these really engaging videos, and it was a constant thing on Facebook. So if you still go on Facebook now, you can still you can contribute your story to the project. You can follow what's happening with the legislation. It was just introduced again, I believe, 2 weeks ago. We're still waiting for Congress to approve it. There's like a space set up and everything. But we gained over 100,000 supporters within a matter of months, just doing really engaging storytelling. And as of now, this is the largest social media following of any single Smithsonian museum outside of the Smithsonian. So again, this is a really great way. It's really grassroots, so similar grassroots that you use for organizing on the ground, same thing that you're doing online. It's meaningful, it's engaging, and you can get those numbers up as you go. And that's my contact info, but I think it's also in there.
So this is going to be the portion where we kind of just have a small discussion here, and I've come up with some really brilliant questions that hopefully will offer some insight. But then after that, I want to just open it up to you guys to, let me know what you're thinking, what, what questions, what suggestions you can get. Now, the two of you both said that the Latino community is like is one of the highest, content producers, fastest growing online with these platforms. But do we have like time frames as to when did this happen? Because that was something that was interesting to me, right? Because Facebook was in 2007, Twitter was like right behind that. So when did we jump on board? Is there anything I'm putting you on the spot? Do you want to?
I believe in transparency, and I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
question. I would imagine it's been, and I think is it 2007 or did it start in 2004? Four. I think I said 2007 earlier, but I meant 2004. So when you said that, I believe it was 2004. But. And I think, and Jasmine, I don't know if you know the answer to that question as to when exactly the Latin presence started to take off. I think that the Facebook presence really started to take off in 2007, so that's why I always think 2007. Okay. But so I think it could have been around that time. I'm guessing,
I
but
know that
it
there's
would be a
been-
guess.
Yeah, like I don't know if there's like an exact moment where it was like boom, the community just took off. But I think I know that there's been bloggers around, like Urban Jibarito. There's a blogger online, and he's been around since 1997. He's one of the oldest Latino bloggers. I think probably the first Latino blogger online. He's still online. So I don't really know exactly when it took off, but I know like around 2007 it really started to go up. MySpace, I think, was the first one. Actually, MySpace, as of last year, has been growing in the Latino demographics again, even though it's kind of been dying off in other people. I don't have MySpace anymore. But I'm not sure exactly when. Probably around 2007, 2008.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to keep in mind that, and we're so used to thinking social media, Facebook, Twitter, but to your point about bloggers is, people were blogging in the early 2000s, late 90s. You were one of them?
I was on MySpace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and they had a great blog feature. See, that's something that I stayed on MySpace a long time because I liked their blog feature. But so really blogging was almost like the beginning of this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Now, I think it was you who said that there's a lot, well, both of you said we're creating a lot of original content. But then you said that when the mommy bloggers or the Latin folks were out there looking for content, they couldn't find it, right? Is that because we're not tagging properly? We're not, doing the metadata. We're not doing keyword phrasing, SEO. Why is that?
I think for me personally, there's certain cities that embrace blogging and being online better than other cities. I'm originally from Denver, and I know blogging is like, no, don't tell your chisme out there, And so there's not a lot of like Southwest bloggers, and if you are, cool, But I think it's just a matter of, I don't even think it's like the metadata. I just don't think that people are like looking for like the Latinas Bible.com blog, I think people will put in topics and then they'll try to figure out what's the best area, but I just don't know if they're exactly searching for it quite yet. I think they're barely starting to search, I guess is what I'm trying to say. As before, it was just kind of like, oh, maybe it doesn't exist, or oh, I've seen it on Twitter, but there isn't a blog. And so I think now for the Latina demographics, you're seeing it being more categorized and much more organized than I think it was before.
You said Latina?
Latina.
Okay,
bloggers.
so like the mommy bloggers.
Like the mommy bloggers, and just Latina entrepreneurs or Latina women in general.
Now, one of you said the Latinos aren't as big in blogging
writing
or in
as
social
much, yeah.
as writing, creating the content.
Right.
Okay.
As
all right.
much as mommy bloggers. I think across the board we see a lot of mommy bloggers. There's a term, but we don't have that many daddy bloggers. We do, and there are
Right,
even some
there-
great single father bloggers and male bloggers, but it's something that is not quite as popular or as
No, definitely.
And there is a really, one of the blogs is at Bobby Blogger. That's his Twitter name is at Bobby Blogger, but I think his website is bobbyblogger.com.
Poppy?
Yeah, like
Cute.
just PAPI. And what he did was that he took family vacations and he blogged about his family vacation because I think he just wanted to put that out there that he was a dad on vacation and the adventures of being a dad on vacation. But I think another aspect of that is that we're also battling with English or Spanish content. So there's a lot of websites out there that will have the content in English, but like for my site, I have some articles in Spanish and some in English because I'm assuming that I'm getting both demographics in, and I usually do. But I also have like a translation service, which I don't like to have, but it's just in case it's there. So I think certain sites are also grappling with which language are we going with? So
I would even take a more giant leap about something deeper in terms of the reflection of media on society and ourselves, and how social media has opened us up and made us more vulnerable in certain ways to share our stories and what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable. And there could be, and I'm not sure, but if you look at the community itself, what people feel comfortable sharing. I wrote an article on Mashable about corporate reputation and some of the steps to take, and I got an email from a gay Korean gentleman who works for the Korean government in tourism, and he was telling me all about what he's seeing in social media and how there is some discussion in the social space for his audience and what he noticed when he lived. He lived in Jakarta, Indonesia, with Muslim girls really adapting and accepting K-pop, Korean pop. And he was talking about social media, and we've seen it with the Arab Spring, as a place to be free. And I think there are some issues that we have to determine within ourselves about freedom of expression and what that really means. And it's really a challenge, I think, because social opens that up, but at the same time, we also find ourselves censoring ourselves too. Oh no, if that's out there, what will this mean for my job? Or, how much do we share and how do we share? And the same thing happened with the telephone, by the way. That completely destroyed a lot of racial barriers because people fell in love with each other on the phone. A lot of the phone operators were actually women. And then they would set up dates and bond with the gentleman. And it turned out there were a couple of cases where they'd show up to meet. They had fallen in love almost like a blind internet date. And they show up and it was a white woman and an African-American male. And they didn't know how to deal with it. But the gradual opening up, people were afraid for their daughters, and that kind of thing. So really, on a deeper level, I think we can talk Latinos and maybe the machismo culture, or maybe it's not even the machismo culture, but the greater implications of what it means with gender and expression.
Do you think that, well, when it comes to corporate, right, when it comes to brands, how do you help a client? So if Coca-Cola, and I'm just using this because obviously Coca-Cola has their own strategy and everything, but I'm just saying that Coca-Cola comes in and says, Layla, we want to do something, we want to do a social media campaign, and we want to do it in Spanish. What would your response be at that point? Would you come back and say, well, we have to focus also on the English-speaking Latino community, and then what would be some of the options?
Well, I think, like I said earlier, I would, if they said we want to do it in Spanish, I'd probably say, great. Why and who are you trying to reach? Because there is Coca-Cola is very popular. It's actually one of the most popular Facebook pages out there, and I believe they don't even have anyone managing the content anymore on staff because so many people just communicate with Coke naturally. So they don't even have to moderate, right? I think I believe I heard this somebody at work. So first I'd find out where they're going. I mean, I think it's obviously a great idea because Coca-Cola is really popular. They have a huge plant, for example, in Mexico and do great business there. Apparently everyone says Mexican Coke is better because it's sweeter.
Yeah.
It is, right? So I would probably say in Spanish makes perfect sense. They've got a great product, but again, it would just be who are you trying to reach, where and how.
Now, you two were both mentioning something about when you're on Twitter, there's not that we're capped at 140,
Right.
140 characters. So at that point, a brand or even a nonprofit, whatever it is, has to make that decision. I'm going to tweet in Spanish versus I'm going to tweet in English. Again, would it be just depending on who you want to reach and what your message is? Is that how would you decipher?
Yeah, you can answer. I'll answer.
Yeah, well, I think with the Twitter parties that we've had with being Latino and Hispanicized, what we do is that we will have like promotional chats that will go out in English and promotional chats that will go, or promotional tweets, I'm sorry, that will go out in English and promotional tweets that will go out in Spanish. And so we'll also have a moderator who's also kind of in charge of making sure that they're retweeting stuff in Spanish, just in case there's like the Spanish, I call them tuiteros, that's what I call them. And that way that content is also reaching the English and the Spanish speaking so that they're not lost throughout the tweet chat. And so I've seen it really go both ways where the first tweet will go out in English, the second tweet goes out in Spanish, and we've had responses in both in English and Spanish. If you do hashtag being Latino, you'll see that half of our conversations are both in English and Spanish, and they make perfect sense.
I think that's a good point. Just and something to consider is that also the channel itself is Hispanic channel in terms of being Latino, so you can kind of have the flexibility. Whereas with a brand that's not solely a Hispanic brand, you have to really kind of think, okay, really who am I going to want to reach and all of that, because in your case, it makes perfect sense. You do both languages. But I think with other brands, what we were discovering with a healthcare client, that they just want to know, should we translate everything into Spanish? And we were like, well, who are you trying to reach and why? And if you're going to have if you're going to consider that, then you have to consider what you're doing in Twitter and have a dedicated Spanish channel, because you can't really do that so much with brands, go back and forth, unless you are, you could probably do that with Kahlua, or, certain brands that are Dos Equis.
Yeah.
You probably even, I would say, opt for Spanglish in those cases, like.
And I think also like what brands will sometimes do, at least the ones that we work with for Being Latino, is that they will make that dedicated Spanish channel. Yeah. So like Best Buy wasn't just like Best Buy all of a sudden tweeting a Tres Reyes party on a Thursday. It was Me Best Buy. So that was the Twitter name, it was Me Best Buy. And that's usually the way it works out with the brand will actually have a Spanish component, same brand, but just like a Spanish flavor to it. And that way it's their Spanish channel and they reach out to that Spanish audience and it works out really well for them, at least on Twitter.
So I want to give the audience a really quick pop quiz, all right? So how many of us here are on Twitter? We tweet.
Nice.
That's a nice. Wait, can you hold your hands up?
Gotta hold
Proud, nice and proud and happy. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. You're on Twitter. How many of you, those with your hands up, tweet in Spanish? Keep your hands up. Oh, the hands went down. Okay, and then.
Oh, I made a funny face there.
All right, you can go ahead and how about how many of us are on Facebook? I should see every hand, right? Every hand. So how many of us that our hands are up, we do our Facebook status in Spanish? Keep them up if you do it in Spanish. And keep it up if you, okay, so then put your hands down. What about do you mix it? Do you do Spanglish?
Yeah, I do that. See, okay.
So the hands went up.
I'm going to tell my colleague this.
That he needs to suck it.
Well, Max, I said, I like Spanglish. She's like, I don't like Spanglish. And I said, I like it. So I was actually going to ask that question, too. I was curious. So we have a good amount of people that rap in Spanglish.
Here's my thing. Like, I grew up in Texas. And so my family spoke Spanish, but then I went to school, of course, and then all we did was speak English. So then I'd come home, and I would try and speak English, and they'd be like, what? ¿Qué? And I'd be like, I can't communicate with you, right? And then, you go, I went through that little uppity phase where I didn't want to speak Spanish. I just wanted to do English. And then it was finally, it was finally when for me, I was growing up in West Texas, Odessa, when Selena got shot, right? And it just like changed everything.
He was
and I was like,
Spanish all the time.
I was like, I put on the CD and I was like, baila mi cumbia and everything, right? So I even signed up to teach a Spanish bilingual, to teach people coming from Mexico, teach them English, an ESL class. And that was hard because by then I had blocked all my Spanish, and then we were trying to communicate with one another. So there was a lot of hand movements and a lot of jumping, but then I embraced it again, so my Spanish is not 100%, but it's there and it's active and it's proud.
So with the American Latino Museum Project, we spent 2 years and we went to 13 different cities. New York was one of them. We were at Hunter College last July, and we asked people about the name Latino versus Hispanic, and it really ranged. I mean, the Southwest was adamant about Hispanic. Some people said Chicano. And then we came to New York, and they were like, absolutely not Hispanic, and absolutely not Latino. And they're like, call us, we had someone say, we want the Puerto Rican Museum of, and we were like, well, we get it, but we spent 2 years, and it came down to the commission members. It was a 23-member commission, and after listening to so many people and kind of really taking in that social data, it came down to the people resonated more with Latino than Hispanic, because we encompassed a larger demographics, although there's a lot of problems with it, just the word itself. Some people were like, we're not of Latin descent, but we definitely took that into consideration. And we were also in Puerto Rico. We had a panel in Puerto Rico where we really listened to the audience there, and they gave us an earful as well. And so it just came down to how the panel selected it and what was going to kind of be cool with everybody at the end.
So focus group.
Focus group. It was a lot of focus groups.
And to your question, which is really such a big question, because it's both, you're talking like consumer goods, you're talking different kinds of probably style and things you even sell to those different regions, and then you're also talking about language.
And I'm gonna put you at this quick fire kind of testing because we're running out of time a little bit. So, can you condense? You're like, Nando, you didn't even let me talk.
Love this. Don't you love it? No, I would basically say the same thing. I mean, and I could talk to you later as well afterwards, but I would say, one, galvanize the people that work within the organization to have a focus group within. Because a lot of companies, and I think IBM does this really well, I work with them and other big brands where you have your advocates within the organization. If you're happy within your organization. But a way to make people happy within their organization is also to listen to people within the organization. Before you listen to the outside and what other people are saying, look within, say, how do you feel, and get your colleagues together and form a group within. This goes really well when it comes to also doing this. Is just slightly different than Latino, but trying to make offices more eco-friendly. If you gather groups and each has a part into what they think needs to be solved, whether it's lighting, paper, that sort of thing. If you take that approach and you look within, I think that's a great place to start. And then beyond that, that's a bigger conversation. But I'm always a big fan of giving audiences what they need and speaking to somebody. So having a channel or doing what CocaCola and other brands are doing, which is custom applications, to focus on language first. And then you can go by region. Like I said, the map feature, I don't know if you were here, but that might be a possibility for you.
I think the purchasing power is going to lie with like the Gen Y crowd, like the I think it's like the 18 to 28-year-olds, kind of everybody in this room. That's where the purchasing power is, as well as with they've also found that with the Latina female households, it's with the mother. And I think in the conversions, I've found that in regards to nonprofits, that conversion is actually a little bit slower because it takes a little bit longer to gain that trust. So it might not be an immediate conversion that you're going to get, but if it becomes that loyalty customer, kind of how Layla was saying, that we really like those brands and we stay with them for a long time. A good example is like when I was in Mexico, I was raised in Mexico, like Vaporub. I was like, Vaporub, what is that? It's Vicks Vapor Rub, right? But it's something that stayed with us. Yeah, Colgate, Gatorade, it's stuff that we keep with us. So that conversion is going to be a little bit slower, and it will happen, but I feel like you have to push a little bit harder with the community to really gain that trust before the conversion will happen.
You can also build into Facebook pages, just to be on a more drilled in level. You can build applications that will show you direct ROI, and they'll lead to sales to to purchase. But I think you make a great point. And children, believe it or not, where the moms have huge purchasing power. The children who are bugging them for things.
That Dora, I'm telling you.
Who do you think wants Dora? Okay, so to answer the first question about content on Twitter versus Facebook, what we often do is we actually schedule out our conversation. We do like you would do in the magazine world, an editorial calendar. We call it our conversation calendar. Of course, things come up that are timely, but we also schedule that according to what's happening with different launches, different activities, different events. So we schedule out within, we mainly do 2 weeks. And we often utilize the similar content for Facebook and Twitter. Sometimes it's the same, but obviously shorter. And sometimes it's slightly different. But again, it's mainly a matter of what it is you're trying to sell, what is launching, and how. They've discovered that if you look at certain statistic, Brian Solis has a great website that if you put the link, I would often put the link at the end, but that's actually not the highest click-through rate. I believe the highest click-through is about the middle. So
I read that statistic, and I was a little bit confused by that.
I was surprised.
Right, because it's pretty much, and then you put your keyword. It pretty much dissected how you should send a tweet out. And it was like, a lot of us put, should you marry in 2011? And then you put the link and then hashtag dating, right? And that's wrong and the way it should be. So I don't understand how you dissect that.
The thing is right or wrong, they just analyzed a bunch of tweets and they looked at, positive tweets or positive posts on Facebook get more. This was another one that came up. Positive get more reaction or more likes than negative. Well, the other day I posted something somewhat negative and snarky, and I got so many status, so many likes. I couldn't believe it. So, I think it just depends on who your audience is. But in terms of the content, it can be very similar. I think sometimes it's good to be in the same line. Like, say it's there's something going on with a mariachi festival or something. You could put a link on Facebook about that festival and some information, and then maybe your Twitter is about a certain star mariachi. So it's in line and not the same, so that if somebody is subscribed to both, they're gonna be like, oh, cool, and here's the star mariachi, whatever. So I think it's nice to have them cohesive, but not necessarily identical.
And it's nice also to use the different platforms that are out there. So on Twitter, you can definitely link to maybe, let's say, whoever is performing one of their YouTube videos, right? On Twitter, put that link up there. And then when you're on Facebook, you can, ask a question about how many of you have seen this person perform, or, set up, a survey or link to their website. That way, you're engaging more. It's not just you, right?
Like screaming at everyone all the time. Yeah.
Right. It's about the engagement as well. That's what I like too.
And I just wanted, the other question you asked was, we use Radian 6 quite a bit. There's also Sysmos. They do similar things. They're not perfect. It's basically like a, scouring. It's almost like a search engine, but it does cool graphs, and you set keywords, and it will look at certain historical data. But, you really need to do a lot of digging, and you need a human being. There are also sentiment programs as well that are about 90% accurate once you start to tag what is positive or negative. But I always say, that might not pick up when you're being facetious and you're saying, oh, I love this brand. They're so great, they made me wait half an hour. It might not pick that up. So a person is good behind the wheel. You need a person behind the wheel.
And I will say at Radiant 6, also, like, you can sign up for, like, a free account, and you can, that free account will allow you to have access to a bunch of ebooks about social media. So social monitoring, social listening, social graphs, and they're all free books. And so I think you have to pay for their service to do some more in-depth listening, but it's a really great way to get really good and really easy to understand industry reads. When I've worked with nonprofits, what we've done is that we've actually done the videos in Spanish with English subtitles. Because the message we're usually targeting a Spanish-speaking base, and in a way, it's not that we're insulting them, but we found that when we do it in English with Spanish subtitles, we don't get the same results. And so what we've done is that we keep it in Spanish with English subtitles. That way, the English-speaking crowd can also just follow what the video is saying. And I've personally found that we have better results that way than doing it the opposite way.
When it comes to pharma, we don't tend to do all that much on Twitter, but there are heavy-duty regulations about branded and unbranded. You can't actually do a lot of branded stuff. And then if anything is mentioned, like an adverse reaction, that has to be flagged, and that's a big deal. So if I could talk to you about corporate clients, and in my case, I'm dealing with a government as well, we're trained. Like having social media training, you can't just put someone who's like, I was a community manager for X, Y, and Z, and just put them in the role without some pretty heavy duty training. We also have something, and if you want to check it out, it's my name and Mashable, it's corporate reputation in social media. I think it came out last week, but if you Google my name and Mashable, it'll come up. Because I gave a bunch of suggestions, and one of them is to have a response matrix. That said, and a response matrix in our case with Mexico is somebody posts something and it is profane. Okay, what do? We usually, we delete. We have flagged words that it won't post right away if it's, profanity. But then it's kind of tricky because people could say stuff like, oh, and I find it amusing that people will like the page and they'll even enter contests to go to Mexico to vacation there, and then they'll post negative stuff on the page, and I'm just like, wow, either, and sometimes it really is tricky to know when you delete it. It'll either be mildly racist or mildly inflammatory. So in those cases, we really look at them same time. We have someone monitoring the page 24/7, but the response matrix will break it out into, this is the kind of post, a red flag, a yellow, and a green. And we do this for Ford as well. Theirs aren't so much, aren't
too bad because it'll be customer service will hop in. But, you know, the instantaneousness of it requires that you respond. And what's interesting about, at least in the case of Mexico, that we've been seeing is that there are so many people can be really negative in the social space, but actually, a lot of times we haven't had to respond. Something like, this person just posted this, what do we do? And we have community managers that are kind of informed as to how to respond to certain things. If someone says, I'm not going there because you'll get shot or kidnapped. Well, that's really negative, and that's actually borderline breaking our community rules. That said, we might have somebody who comes back with this statistics and the facts and says, actually, the violence is only 5% of the entire country. So that's like saying, I'm not going to go to New York because there are shootings in South Central. You know, so they're informed as to what are the facts and how to respond to them, and we sort of go through that, and we don't necessarily delete all the negative stuff. We let people sort of respond.
How many of you sitting here work in social media? Wow. And those of you with your hands up, how many of you work for social media nonprofit? Nice. And then raise your hand if you're social media corporate. Wow. And then how many of you, so that I'm assuming that's why you came. How many of you came because you got lost and this is the door that was? Okay, sorry. Just to give you a little insight. What I do, and he's like, does Nando ever stop talking? So what I do at Ogilvy is I hire for the social media division. So my job is to bring people on board like Layla, who is our VP for, you know, several different clients. So I get the orders, Nando, we need an account director for, you know, for Unilever. We need an SVP for this. We need an executive vice president for that, right? So at that point, I start looking on LinkedIn. And this is just a general for everybody, right? If you're looking to switch careers, if you're looking to, you know, get that boost or get that raise, always have your LinkedIn profile very, very
with
upgraded. With keywords and also very up to date, all right? Always make sure, that's like the number one. That's my Bible. That's, as a recruiter, that's the first place I go. So I start typing in my keyword search. I go on there and I see that all you have is from 97, 99, you worked here and this was your position. You don't add all the meat. You don't add all the stuff. So at that point, I pass you over. You might be the most perfect person.
Oops, I don't add all the stuff.
I'm going to pass you over because you've given me nothing, right? So these are just like a little bit of tips. I know it's like Latino in social media, but I'm Latino and we're talking about social media. So another thing that I wanted to tell you was,
but wait,
in general,
can I ask you a question
yes.
about that? Because I used to have all my meat in there, and I didn't like it from a competitive standpoint. I didn't want everybody seeing my stats, what I worked on, the language I used.
No, I don't want to see your stats. What I want to know is that you're a VP at Ogilvy.
Okay.
And then this is what you do. You do strategy for social media,
Okay.
this and this and that.
Okay,
I'm
a
talking
little
about
bit.
It's so bare bones that all I get is Ogilvy. Well, I don't know what you did there.
Got it.
You know?
Okay.
So if you're looking
Good
for that upgrade,
clarification.
if you're looking for that bump,
'Cause you and
you
I
got to
were-
give me a little bit of something. Another thing is, if you claim to be into social media, I need to see the sites, right? So you can link your Twitter on there, and then that gets into the big debate of, do I link up my personal Twitter account or do I link up my business Twitter account? I have two. I have one for Ogilvy, and then I have my own for my own blog. So link up whichever one, you know, is going to get you the job and not passed over for the job. Because honestly, the statistics came out, and I believe it's 67
They all check.
of employment agencies will check your social media. And I'm one of them. I will be on your Twitter quicker than anything. I'll be going through your Facebook. I'll be going through everything because I need to see the type of person that you are. You know, are you a liability to the company, or are you going to be an asset to the company, right? So if I see all these negative, like you were talking about, negative remarks, this and that, is this the kind of person I want to bring in to work with us, right? No, it's not. So I just wanted to give everybody like an overall tip, 101 social media from somebody who does the recruitment for one of the largest advertising agencies
I like
on the
to
globe.
properly confuse them with occasionally, I'm very opinionated and I'm a women's rights activist and gay activist and all that stuff. And so I think to myself, and I think you make a great point, but I don't want to censor myself too much because to me that's a form of death. and I'd rather live in Iran then if I'm going to not be able to speak my feelings about things and certain things that I think are important. So if I'm not going to get hired because I say this, please sign this petition, I think toddlers and tiaras should be off the air because they're sexualizing little girls and it's wrong. For example, let's just say.
No, but what I look at
Just a
there
case
is
study.
I'm like, I don't wanna be hired, you
What's
know?
her engagement, right?
Yeah.
So I'll go on Twitter, and if she got 4 people to tweet back to her, I'm like, she knows what she's doing. So I don't look
Yeah.
at your content and judge you. In a sense, I look at like what's your engagement, because you're claiming to be a social media
Yeah.
strategist, and yet you're just shouting at people.
Plus,
You
you
know?
should see his sites. They're great, and he has like some really fun stuff. So, you're definitely yourself and expressive.
Yeah, I'm surprised I got the job, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. But I'm locked in, so they can't get rid of me.
So one quick thing, this is not necessarily about Latinas, but I write about stuff very similar. So check out a piece on the Huffington Post I did called Beauty and the Media Beast,
Nice. I like art.
because it has to do with decoding messages when it comes to women. And also men, and the rising incidences of manorexia and the shrinking size of the male mannequin. So it's different, it's not about Latinos, but it's similar decoding of messages. So go ahead.
No, I think along the same lines, something that I do, and I'll be presenting on this in April actually at Hispanicize hopefully, is really talking about when we reach out to brand ambassadors, or if you're a blogger and they're reaching out for you to be a brand ambassador, to really understand the consequences of you representing that brand. So a perfect example, like let's say Johnson & Johnson reaches out to a larger Latino blogging community and wants to blog about it, but there's a lot of issues going on with Johnson & Johnson and how it impacts infants, right? The chemicals that are in the stuff that makes it smell like beautiful baby oil, that actually impacts infants, So if you're a blogger, being really aware of the kind of branding messaging that you're putting on yourself, that you're then promoting and bringing into the community, right? Because you're a trusted source and you're a trusted blogger for the community, and that you're saying, yes, everybody please go buy Johnson & Johnson because you just got hooked up with a ton of baby oil, right? And so that's a conversation that we have, at least when I work with small businesses and a little bit larger companies, I guess, and saying, well, when you're looking at bloggers, again, that transparency, what are you asking them to promote, and what are you doing to them to not put them in a position where they're doing something that isn't going to be for the better health of the community. So I think it's conversations that are starting to come up a lot more, because it is a social justice issue of what we're introducing and what we're bringing in to then impact the Latino community.
I think they're being forgotten in this election. I haven't heard much other than immigration, rah-rah, a little bit, always from the GOP. And, you've done a lot of work here, so you know the reality. And I grew up in Arizona, so I know the reality. I think they're being forgotten, and I think that nobody's really speaking to that community. I think, there are a lot of Latinos or Hispanic Republicans as well. So when we say the GOP, I hate to make these blanket statements because there are, but you might want to tackle it too.
I think we're seeing it a lot
Tricky.
more with the Democrats. I know that the White House did a really big campaign this past fall, where the White House Initiative on Excellence in the Latino community came out, and they did roundtable discussions all across the United States, talking to Latino leaders about what happened with the Obama administration the last 4 years, because the majority of the Latino demographics felt like we got used and abused. And the rest of us were kind of feeling like, an abusive boyfriend, like, I like you, I want to come back to you, but, you're not really delivering here. And they knew that. And so they really went around the country listening to Latino leaders. They were here in New York, and we gave them a mouthful. Everything about immigration, everything about health, anything education was a really big one as well on the table about Latinos in education. And they did a really good job of getting these reports out, and they also deliver a weekly Latino White House report of what they did that week for the Latino community. And so it was a way of holding them accountable, and that's coming from the Obama administration now. You also see the Democrats with the Obamanos campaign is about to hit up, and I know that they're waiting to start that, I think, in about March or April, and they have some really great strategies about connecting with the older demographics of the abuelas, right? The abuela network, if they can get in with the abuelas, they're good. Right? So those are on-the-ground campaigns that are then going to transform into these larger social media campaigns. And so I think We're seeing it much better done with the Democrats than we are the Republicans. I think we're going to see it a little bit more as things start to heat up, probably like May, June. I don't know what it's going to look like because I think the Latino population in regards to how we vote is really, again, you can't really categorize them. It's going to range by Southwest and the Northwest, the Northeast, the Southwest, or Southeast. But I think the best part that's used it so far is maybe the Democrats. And I think they're going to get better at it because the Obama campaign was so heavily social media. They've gotten so much more better, or so much better, not
So
more better.
Obamanos is taking over for Si Se Puede?
Obamanos is taken. I mean, I think it is.
Interesting.
And so, from what I understand, coming down is the Obamanos.
Oh, Obama knows. Oh, sorry.
Obamanos, like vamonos.
Yeah, right.
Obamanos.
Nice. Well, I think you brought up a great point about humor, not just for the Latin audience, but I think for all audiences, that people respond very powerfully to a good message. It doesn't matter. I'll respond well to a Latin commercial. I'll respond well to, a French commercial if it's funny or clever or touching. So, I mean, as I was saying earlier, I don't know if you were here, but, really the research has to come first in terms of what audience you're trying to reach. I mean, I think you made a good point about Puerto Rico. In New York, everybody wanted a Puerto Rican museum because there are a lot of Puerto Ricans. But if you went to Miami, it would be, well, where's the Cuban American Cuban American museum? So I think it's really a research intensive thing and a story intensive thing.
And don't even start on Texas. We just want the Selena Museum.
Yeah,
You know?
that's true.
So,
That's true.
It's not even.
And I think also sometimes what I've found is that the Latino community is just really happy that you're talking to us. Like in Spanish, we're just like, thank you for texting me. And actually, that's something that is kicking up with the Democrats. They have an amazing texting campaign from the Obama administration, and Latinos love it. We respond 7% versus 3% of their counterparts. So that's another like Web 3.0 where the Latinos are going into. But sometimes just having that Spanish, even with an accent, is just cool for us because it's like Bloomberg. When the hurricane hit, he was like, "El las calles closed cerrados," and people were like, "You good for you? You tried."
Okay, but to her point, which was very funny, did you guys see Miguel Bloomberg? The spoof on that.
And El Bloomberg.
It was sweet, but it was kind of
people
funny.
were like, you know what, you tried.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in the social space, but from having worked in advertising on the more traditional television, radio side, they're not thinking that far into it. I'll be honest, they're not. They're thinking Latino.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as they're thinking.
Clumped together.
Yeah, just as they're thinking woman who looks like a mom, or it's very.
Yeah, I was noticing
it's
that
like
the other
central
day, 'cause
casting.
Since working in advertising now, I look at I just zero in on things, and it's just like I was watching this commercial of this mom so happy as can be washing dishes, and because her new dishwashing soap smells like tangerine, and they made the housewife look like Felicity Huffman from Desperate Housewives.
Yeah.
And I was like, kept looking, I was like, is she doing dishwashing soap commercials? But that's what, marketers have to make a decision on who are we going to target, and then let's just make her look like so-and-so.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't think we're ever, like you said, we're not thinking that far
I think
ahead.
it's a problem.
But I think you had mentioned a campaign that went totally backlash with the beer.
Oh, the
Right?
Emboricuate campaign where it was
Who
like,
was that? It was Coors.
It was Coors, right? I believe it was Coors.
So number one, I come from Texas, right? And so everybody, like from my uncles to my dad, everybody, it's Coors Light. So that in itself
What happened? What was it?
would have offended us because we're like, we don't even know what that. I didn't even know what
was
that
the
word meant
situation?
until I moved to New
Well,
York.
the
I
situation.
thought it was I thought it was an offense. I thought it was a racist word, to be honest with you. And then I heard J Lo singing about it. I'm like, okay, must be okay. But
I want to, for the audience,
Yeah.
so she can
So,
explain what it was.
about around the same time of the Puerto Rican Day Parade this
This
past
year.
summer, this year, Coors came out with this, what they thought was a really clever, no witty commercial, and it was billboards and signs, and it was on social media of Emboricuate, in order to kind of like get drunk, go get a six-pack, and get all Puerto Rican, I guess, is what they were trying to say. And it was all over, and it was immediately caught on different Latino blogs. It was on Facebook, it was on Twitter, and the message came out fast. So within 3 or 4 days, that campaign was shut down. And again, that's the power of social media. in regards to like how do we kind of bring that social justice component. Well, as much as brands are putting stuff out there, the consumer now has a much louder voice, and we can scream sometimes a lot louder than a brand can manage. Nestle was another one that kind of had a really bad campaign. Well, it was a good campaign gone wrong in the end because they opened up the Facebook page and then Greenpeace came in because there's some problems with Nestle out in some different plants.
Lipton, we had
Lipton
this
tea.
problem too.
Yeah, and so people came in and were like, well, you're
But
abusing
what was
this.
good about it was that Lipton, because we represented Lipton, I was at Ogilvy while this was going on, and I think PETA came in and started posting on the page about Lipton testing on animals and stuff like that, and it was a big crisis. They were so upset, and I'm thinking, this is great. But, you know, I'm an activist working in the corporate world, so it's like I decided which way I wanted to get in so we could change it. And the reality is they're not testing on animals anymore. They came in, people, it created such fervor and all sorts of stuff, and so they're not doing it. So, I mean, it's really interesting that some of that stuff. I wonder with the Coors ad, though, with something like that, that seems like an ad that was developed by someone who speaks Spanish. So for somebody, it was funny. There was another vodka ad that was saying, I don't know if you knew the vodka bottle. It was a billboard that was something like about Christmas or Jews and saving money. And now the thing is, like, you know, it depends on your level of the funny thing about it is that the guy who developed the ad is Jewish, so he wasn't offended, but everybody else is offended. Anyway, they pulled it down, and you know, so it's just our levels of sensitivity. You know, with the Rupert Murdoch tweet,
Oh, yeah.
you know, that became a big deal. It's like, is that really a big deal? To me, that's not a big deal. You know, but so really, where we draw the line is the question: how, you know, up in arms are we going to get about every little thing?
All right, so I want to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and end things now, right, Paloma? So I think we had a very great discussion, really smart questions from the audience. It was really nice seeing you guys here. If you have any further questions, obviously you have, you know, contact information. If you need relationship advice, go to my blog, nandoism.com. And
If you need travel, I also have travel blogs, eco travel and luxury travel.
and
so
if
you
you
can
want to
check
stay
those
on
out.
top of what's going on in the Latin community,
Yeah.
you go to Jasmine's blog as well. So
Perfect.
thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Yep.